The government just announced that it's going to put new rules into place in 30 days that are going to make it even harder for some people to get asylum. Check out this video to see if one of these changes might affect you in your asylum case. If we're just now meeting, I'm Brian Manning, and I'm a political asylum lawyer. That means that I help people all over the country to secure their future in the United States through asylum. At the end of November, new rules are going to go into effect that are going to bar people, or in other words, keep people from getting asylum if one of these things applies to them. Now, these changes that the government just announced have to do with criminal activity for the most part. And there are things that if they apply in your case, well, then you're not going to get asylum because of it. So these are new bars to asylum. And the first one concerns convictions, being convicted for, in a court of law, for a felony. What's a felony? Well, you can think of it as a pretty serious crime that involves at least a year's worth of jail time if you're convicted of it. So usually it's pretty serious things. If you're convicted of a felony, you won't be able to get asylum. And the next thing is immigration related. There's a couple of immigration related bars that the government has just announced. One of them is illegal reentry. So if you get deported from the United States and then you sneak back in and you get convicted, that's actually a crime. If you get convicted of that, well, that'll keep you from getting asylum. And then another one that's immigration related is called alien smuggling or harboring. So if you've been convicted of a crime that has to do with basically helping people to come to the United States illegally or sheltering them and helping them once they're here to evade being found by the authorities, that can keep you now under these changes that are going into effect at the end of November 2020 from getting asylum. And so another one involves criminal street gang activity. If you're convicted of a crime that has to do with something that pertains to street gang activity. So another one is driving while under the influence or while intoxicated. So that can be any kind of drug or stimulant that impairs your ability to drive safely. If you're convicted of a crime for driving under the influence of alcohol or driving because you're high or convicted for driving while high, then you're going to be barred under these changes from getting asylum. And so next is using a false identification. If you present a false ID and you get caught and convicted of a crime that has to do with presenting false identification, you could be barred from asylum. And the next is unlawfully receiving public benefits. So if you commit fraud in getting, let's say, food stamps would be an example of a public benefit. If you're not supposed to be getting them, but you trick the government into giving them to you and you get convicted of a crime for that, you'd be barred from getting asylum under these changes. And then really anything having to do with drugs, possession or trafficking of a controlled substance, which can mean just about any kind of drug that's not sold over the counter in any given store. A conviction for that will keep you from getting asylum under these changes, as will a conviction for anything related to paraphernalia of a controlled substance. So the things that you would keep drugs in or use to smoke drugs or something like that. If you get convicted of a crime because you had that drug stuff with you, that could be a bar to getting asylum now. And then this one's going to affect a lot of people, domestic violence. Now, everything that we've talked about previously today so far in this video has to do with things that you actually get convicted of, where a judge says in a court that you're guilty, or you plead no contest to a crime. And there's actually like a record from a court that says you did this bad thing. Now, this one's different. This bar for domestic violence doesn't require a conviction for the asylum officer to say, or the immigration judge to say, sorry, you can't get asylum because of this domestic violence. So this one's going to be tricky because there could be some hint or suggestion or accusations that someone has had a history of domestic violence, but it's not proven, and it could be the case that sometimes these accusations are false, or there may be some reason to think that maybe there was domestic violence, but in reality there wasn't. Yet this could still keep you from getting asylum, both at the asylum office and in the immigration court context. So those are the main things that the government is now saying are ways that you can be barred from getting asylum, in addition to all the other things that can already keep you from getting asylum. And again, this goes into effect at the end of November 2020. and it will be applied from then on out unless a new administration possibly changes it. Like if the Democrats win the White House and they want to change the way that some of the asylum stuff is interpreted, they could change this, or possibly a court could say that this is not fair, that it's not legal, these changes, or at least the way in which the government made these changes is illegal and could block the government from enforcing them. But for now, you have to plan that these are in fact going to go into effect and be applied and keep a lot of people from getting asylum. If you have any questions about any of this stuff, or just want to talk about your situation and talk about asylum with me, I'd love to hear from you. Please just send me a direct message through my Facebook page or Instagram page or YouTube channel. Leave a comment. All of those are Manning Asylum Law, where you can find me on those channels, or call my office at 713-909-0401. Again, 713-909-0401. Again, I'm Brian Manning, and it's an honor to support you in your asylum journey.